Hello, I'm Bruce Penney, and this is the first preview of 3 video documentaries being prepared for the forthcoming 75th anniversary of Albury being proclaimed a city. I'm presenting the previews in History Week 2021 with the theme From the Ground Up, and in Social Sciences Week when the university takes opportunities to alert the public of its research activities, and with the help of the Albury and District Historical Society, which supports local history research. This preview explains the writing strategy I've adopted as I look to how and why Albury became a town, a city, and then part of the Albury-Wodonga complex. I want to establish something of the place's character, something of its identity, by looking to its past. My work involves thinking with pictures, not just as illustrations and demonstrations, but as evidence to be questioned. I followed loosely an approach developed by Graham Davison and focused on 3 groups of planners, dreamers, visionaries, leaders involved in the beginnings of the town, its inauguration as a city, and imagining and reimagining Albury-Wodonga in the present day. I selected 3 phases, 3 turning points, 3 thresholds, and I do that by interrogating 3 sets of key visual evidence. The first part, on Albury becoming a town, looks to the cause and effect of a surveyor's map. Albury existed as a place in song lines for thousands upon thousands of years. The river crossing place was known to the First Nation people as Bungambrawatha, Wiradjuri, Dudharoa, Wairu, Pangarang, Yorta Yorta, and other peoples occupied the area and or travelled through it along the river route. But this map erases the Indigenous people. It asserts settler ownership. It was used to inform white settlers of the crossing place and to encourage them to buy land at it. As a cadastral map, it parcels land into ownable blocks. It pays no heed to those who lived with and on the land and the river, other than to note the name they called it. The second video, on Albury becoming a city, moves to 3 aerial photographs from 1949, which help planners track how Albury was developing on the ground. With them, we can scrutinise what kind of place Albury was 75 years ago by tracing road, rail, and river routes through the new city. A third video looks to the now and the near now, for anniversaries are about the now as well as the then. It shows how modern-day planners and placemakers determine the city's identity and proclaim its character. In all 3 parts, I've gathered visual images which explain how Albury was being planned, imagined, represented, experienced. And I begin with explanation of how the town of Albury came into being by looking to the cause and effect of Thomas Townsend's survey map in 1839. At Broken River, near Benalla, on the 11th of April 1838, Aborigines attacked a party overlanding cattle for the Faithful Brothers along the newly marked track between Yass and Port Phillip. They killed 8 men. Panic set in. Settlers who'd taken up runs nearby abandoned them. There were reprisal attacks on Aborigines and Aboriginal raids on settlers in the area. The newly arrived Governor Gibbs was under instruction from the Home Office to ensure that Aborigines had the responsibilities and rights of the justice system. He was preparing to issue instructions similar to those issued earlier by Governor Davey, stressing equality before the law, and he delayed his proclamation when he heard of this attack and another attack which killed 3 settlers near the Guaida River in the north of the colony. Deeply troubled by sporadic violence, some colonists petitioned Gipps to raise a militia to counter Aboriginal aggression, but he refused to declare war. Gipps was aware of a reprisal attack by a group of mounted police under the command of a military officer at Waterloo Creek, near Moree, in January, before his arrival. Perhaps of this contemporary lithograph showing the military precision of the massacre of about 40 or 50 people. In June, he learnt of the Myall Creek massacre, again in the north, in which 28 defenceless Aboriginal people were killed by a group of vigilantes. Some thought the killings were brutish. Magistrates investigated each of these collisions, as Gipps called them, but were unable to gather sufficient evidence to bring charges against settlers or Aboriginal murderers involved in the Waterloo Creek or Faithful massacres. The Myall Creek massacre, however, led to trials, convictions and punishments. Some colonists bewail the punishment of the men found guilty of the murders. In July, Gipps moved to ensure that the route to Port Phillip was safe to travel. He decided to establish military stations at crossing places to act as posts of protection. On his instruction, Thomas Townsend, a surveyor, located the best ford at the Murray River and a vantage point for a police hut to guard that crossing. He also created a town which might meet travellers' needs with houses of entertainment. People from both ends of the line of communication might be enticed to buy 1-acre town blocks and settle at the crossing. The police hut vantage point Townsend selected along the Howlong Road was used to represent the crossing in magazines for city readers well into the 19th century. But the police hut has now disappeared. Archaeologists are attempting to locate the site with a dig, somewhere west of a sewer pipe, close to a track above the main walk through Mate and Padman Park. They're trying to locate where the hut was on the ground and to locate it in time. Eddie Kneebone was a Pangerang man who brought a modern-day Indigenous perspective to the story of the Faithful Massacre and frontier violence. He depicted the bloody math of the massacre in a series of pictures called Bones of Contention. Blood drips from a slash through several panels in the series. His storytelling will be of interest to the Yuruk Justice Commission, established as part of the Victorian treaty making. The Justice Commission is charged with reporting on truth-telling about the impact of white settlement on First Peoples and wants First Nations people to tell their stories. The sites of the Waterloo Creek Massacre and the Myall Creek Massacre have been heritage listed as sites of shared memory important to all Australians. The site of the Faithful Massacre has not been heritage listed, but the local Historical Society has erected a marker. The police hut at the Albury Crossing place has no heritage listing and no marker. It's nothing more than a mark on a map in an archive. It was not a site of mass murder, but it clearly indicates that the country was being occupied by armed force and it shows why a town called Albury was formed. With the images I've collected, I want to nudge public memory to enlarge Albury's two creation stories, most frequently depicted as tales of Human Hovel and Robert Brown. The story of Albury being founded as a post of protection reframes and encloses the other two within the wider discourse of dispossession, which fits better with the truth-telling required in the 2020s. The construction of a police hut at the Bungamble Watha crossing place was the founding moment of the town of Albury. The next video deals with the proclamation moment of Albury City in 1946-47.